Engineering is complex work, and even the best in the field are capable of making mistakes. This also goes for the fine folks who design roller coasters. Now, just because a roller coaster has a design flaw doesn't make it bad, and that's the case with most of the rides on this list. However, I thought it would be interesting to look at some of the most famous design flaws on today's roller coasters. So as voted on by the fans, here are the top 10, right here on Theme Park Crazy. This video is brought to you by Superior Solitaire, with 11 game modes and no in-app purchases. Number 10, the first hill on the Ride to Happiness at Belgium's Plopsaland de Pont. This first coaster may surprise you considering how new it is. Plus, German manufacturer Mack Rides is one of the most seasoned coaster companies in the world. However, like I said at the beginning, even the best engineers can make mistakes. This ride is known as an extreme spinning coaster model and is one of only two in operation, the other one being Time Traveler at Missouri's Silver Dollar City. While Time Traveler has received universal acclaim, many consider the Ride to Happiness to be even more insane. With its thrilling inversions and relentless pace, some say it's one of the best roller coasters on Earth. Even still, this ride had a pretty clear design flaw when it first opened. After the first launch, the coaster ascends a steep incline and an outwards banked left turn, and it was at this moment that the original design had a major flaw. The problem with this hill was that it was theoretically easy for the trains to valley at the top. On February 19, 2023, this is exactly what happened, with the train getting stuck at this point. Even worse, due to high winds left over from Storm Eunice and short firefighter ladders, it took 6 hours to evacuate everyone on board with a crane. This all would have been avoided if the train was able to roll back to the station. In response to this incident, drive tires were installed on the hill, so the next time the train valleys, the tires can simply push it back to the station. As it stands, this coaster is operated without incident, and it remains a bucket list attraction for many enthusiasts. Number 9, the LIMs, or Linear Induction Motors, on Mr. Freeze at Six Flags Over Texas, and Mr. Freeze Reverse Blast at Missouri's Six Flags St. Louis. These two coasters are literally the same, with the only difference being the direction the trains face, so this applies to both of them. These coasters, along with the now defunct Batman and Robin the Chiller, were originally built to promote the disastrous Batman and Robin movie. However, both Mr. Freeze coasters were delayed 1 year due to issues with the launch system. These were some of the earliest magnetic launch coasters, and this new technology often caused issues. The design flaw in this coaster doesn't really have to do with the launch itself, but rather where it's placed on the track. The ride experience consists of a 70-mile-per-hour launch followed by an inverting top hat, an overbanked turn, and a vertical spike. The train then descends the spike in the opposite direction and repeats the layout backwards. Some may think the design flaw is the first launch, but there's actually another launch on this coaster. Attached to the vertical spike is another system of LIMs, which push the train down faster than gravity. Without these LIMs, the trains wouldn't have enough momentum to return to the station. And therein lies the problem. If the launch system on the spike fails, the train can easily valley at either the bottom of the spike or after the overbanked turn. Had the launch system been placed at the bottom of the spike, it would be much easier for the train to be launched out of this area. But as it stands, if the train valleys, it either has to be disassembled with a crane or lifted up the spike with a winch and sent back down. This is a lengthy process, so if you see the train valley during one of your visits, don't expect to ride it that day or even for the next few days. The bulky LIM system could only be installed on straight sections of track. Had there been a straight section at the bottom of the spike, they could have put the launch there. If you plan on visiting either of these Six Flags parks, make sure you ride this early in the day, just in case. Number 8, the upstop pads and the original lap bars on Magnum XL-200 at Ohio's Cedar Point. Upon its opening in 1989, Magnum XL-200 was the tallest full-circuit roller coaster on Earth, and the only one of its kind to break the 200-foot barrier. Built by American manufacturer Aerodynamics, this coaster was their most ambitious project at the time. As such, the company designed this ride in the same way as their older attractions. Some of the design choices, though, were extremely problematic. First of all, the original restraint system was a thin metal lap bar. This, as you can imagine, was extremely painful considering the coaster's notable ejector airtime. Another big issue was the fact that this coaster did not use upstop wheels, which are wheels that run underneath the rails to keep the train on the track. Instead, the coaster had metal upstop pads which grinded against the track. Naturally, the high forces of the ride led to excessive wear on the rails. Nowadays, metal pads are still used on some tamer roller coasters, such as this example on Magic Mountain's Gold Rusher. But on a hypercoaster like Magnum, they were simply a poor fit. Both the restraints and the upstop pads would be switched out shortly after the coaster's opening. More padding was added to the lap bars, and upstop wheels were placed on the trains. These, along with other modifications, greatly improved the ride, and it continues running strong today. If you want to learn more about Magnum's changes over the years, I've linked El Toro Ryan's Problematic Coasters video in the description. Awesome stuff. Number 7. The first turn on Intimidator 305 at Virginia's King's Dominion. In 2010, this coaster made its debut to enormous fanfare from thrill seekers. Coaster enthusiasts praised its high speed, massive size, and heavy forces. However, these forces actually caused some pretty notable problems at first. The most intense moment by far occurs after the first drop. After plunging 300 feet, the train transitions straight into a banked right turn. When the ride first opened, this turn was considered to be way too intense for general audiences and even some enthusiasts. Several people were said to have blacked out on this coaster. A blackout occurs when positive G's push blood away from your head and you temporarily lose consciousness. Some enthusiasts consider this fun, but even most of my viewers agree that passing out on a roller coaster is more terrifying than enjoyable. Because of this overintensity, the coaster's ridership plummeted shortly after opening. In fact, more people were said to have ridden the park's floorless coaster Dominator in Intimidator's opening year. The phrase, "Giga Coaster 1 looks too intense for me," definitely applied here. At first, a set of trim brakes were installed on the first drop to reduce the speed, but everyone knows that slowing down the first drop is a total buzzkill. So for the 2011 season, the park had the first turn reprofiled to tone down the G-forces a bit. This process even involved rerouting a service road to make room for the footers. Since then, the coaster has operated with much less complaints. And as for the original track, it was actually kept in storage behind Grizzly, but has since been removed. Number 6. The launch on Lightning Rod at Tennessee's Dollywood. In 2016, this attraction opened as the world's first launch wooden coaster. With the use of a magnetic LSM or linear synchronous motor launch, guests were taken up the side of a large hill and sent through a terrain-based layout packed to the gills with airtime. Despite the ride itself being acclaimed though, it would end up being a maintenance migraine for the park. The ride's manufacturer, Rocky Mountain Construction, had never built a launch coaster before, and Dollywood's request to make it a wooden coaster made it especially challenging. Without the resources to design a launch themselves, RMC ended up working with Pennsylvania company Velocity Magnetics. While the company agreed to build the launch system, they too had never built one. Velocity's work experience did involve magnetic systems, but they were braking systems and not launch systems. From the very beginning, the coaster struggled with its launch system. Not only was it prone to overheating, but it would oftentimes fail to launch the trains up the hill, causing rollbacks. Supposedly, this was due to the wooden structure flexing underneath the launch track. Wooden structures are much more flexible than steel ones, and this allegedly caused the launch fins to be misaligned with the trains, causing an error that shut down the coaster. These issues, in addition to wear and tear on the wooden track, led to a problematic first few years at the park. Eventually, most of the coaster's layout was given a steel retracking. Though it's said to be more reliable than before, it still reportedly has issues. Overall, this coaster's story is too big for a top 10 video, and there are more details I haven't mentioned. So feel free to subscribe and stay tuned later this month. Number 5. The final turn on Pegasus at Wisconsin's Mount Olympus. A couple weeks ago, we talked about the polarizing Hades 360. Some people love this coaster and some people hate it, but the ride on this list is one that pretty much everyone dislikes. This ride is supposed to be a family wooden coaster. However, many have criticized it for its roughness and heavy discomfort. The profiling and layout are just bizarre, consisting mostly of uncomfortable turns. And though there are a few airtime hills at the end, riders are suddenly blindsided with an unbanked jerk to the right. Just one look at this clip can easily lead one to believe the designers used the autocomplete feature for this coaster. It was like they were designing the layout and all of a sudden realized the station was right in front of them. To its credit, some viewers have said the turn really isn't that bad, but others would consider it a reverse bucket list coaster, as in a coaster you hope to go your whole life without riding. If you've experienced this turn, feel free to let me know about it in the comments section. Number 4. The inversions on Texas Tornado at Texas's Wonderland Amusement Park. This story is just hilarious, and has been publicly shared by the park. Apparently, this coaster was originally designed on a napkin at a trade show cocktail party. The manufacturer was Florida-based company Hopkins Rides. This company is mostly known for their Flume and Shoot the Chutes rides, but they did build a few roller coasters. With Texas Tornado, it wasn't until the ride was constructed that a major problem was discovered. As it turned out, the trains were unable to complete the inversions. In a supposed effort to save time and money, officials made the unorthodox decision to attach what looked like spokes to the structure. This way, only the track had to be reprofiled, while the structure of the inversions remained the same. The result is one of the strangest looking roller coasters out there. Fortunately, this ride is said to be an enjoyable coaster and a must ride for unique credit seekers. Number 3. The Drop on Tower of Terror at South Africa's Gold Reef City. This is definitely one of the most mysterious operating roller coasters out there. Designed by Ferris wheel specialist Ronald Boosink, yes Boosink, not Boosnik. Number 16. The Evolution, built by Dutch designer Ronald Boosnik.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine.
This coaster was said to be built by either Swiss manufacturer Giovanola or by local companies. Either way, when it first opened, it had a major flaw with its main element. After ascending an actual mining tower, the train plunges down a 90-degree drop. Initially, the bottom of this drop was supposed to exert around 4 Gs on riders. However, the forces were greatly underestimated in the design process, and the actual ride turned out to be 6.3 Gs. This unintentionally made it the most forceful roller coaster on Earth. As it turned out, the pullout of the drop was too sudden. Anyone who's designed a ride in Planet Coaster can tell you that suddenly switching directions is way too forceful. Fortunately, in the mid-2000s, the coaster was renovated, giving it new trains, a new elevator lift system, and an adjusted drop. Nowadays, the G-forces are much closer to what they were originally intended to be. Regardless of losing its record though, this coaster is still a fascinating addition to any enthusiast's credit list. Number 2. The Heartline Roll on Maverick at Cedar Point. Yep, another Cedar Point coaster is on this list. Unlike Magnum though, this design flaw was hammered out before the ride opened. When the coaster was originally announced, its layout featured a Heartline roll after the covered launch. This inversion was tested a few times, but almost immediately, the problems with it were evident. You may be thinking that such a fast inversion would risk serious injury to the passengers, but this actually isn't the case. As the name of this inversion implies, a Heartline roll has your chest as the center of rotation, so passengers would easily be able to navigate this without any danger. But while the passengers would be spared from the roll's forces, the trains would be completely subjected to them. The inversion was so forceful that it put way too much stress on the trains, which could have easily led to accelerated wear and tear. Had the inversion stayed in place, the cost of maintaining the trains would have likely been astronomical. So to make things easier for the park, the inversion was removed and replaced with a simpler S-curve. Funnily enough, the Heartline roll was not sold for scrap, but was instead sent to steel fabricator Adena Corporation in Mansfield, Ohio. It was recently discovered on Google Earth, and a few enthusiasts have taken the trek out to Mansfield to check it out. A remarkable piece of Cedar Point's history. Number 1. The racing feature on Twisted Colossus at California's Six Flags Magic Mountain. Now this one may be controversial, since many of my viewers have argued that it isn't really a design flaw. However, after conducting a separate poll, I decided to leave it in here, since it's debatable. First opening in 2015, this RMC iBox coaster was a revival of the park's old wooden coaster, Colossus. That racing coaster had 2 separate tracks, but for Twisted Colossus, both of the tracks were combined into a single layout. Ordinarily, this would be considered a Mobius loop coaster, but since the whole layout is traversed in one circuit and there's only one boarding station, it's considered a quasi-Mobius loop coaster. The main selling point of this ride was the racing feature, and the ability to have 2 trains interacting with each other on the course. The problem was that this feature was extremely hard to execute correctly. In order to race another train, ride operators have less than a minute to dispatch it. Of course, the station has bins, meaning riders will inevitably need time to put away their wallets, phones, and drink cups. And of course, the ride operators still have to carefully check everyone's restraints. All the while, the other train is inching up the lift hill. The lift hill can slow down, but it won't stop entirely. Because of the strict guidelines, the trains are said to rarely duel each other. Some have suggested that there should be a holding brake before the second lift hill. The problem with this method is that passengers would be stuck outside waiting before the lift hill. This would kill the ride's pacing and lead to hampered operations. So with this coaster, racing is purely up to chance. And it all really boils down to there not being two stations. I can only imagine how stressful it would be to be a ride operator on this ride, with someone on board demanding to race. You constantly have to tell everyone how many seconds they have left to race. Then, if someone takes 500 years emptying their cargo pockets into the bins, you end up getting blamed for the trains not racing. If you work this ride, you deserve a lot of respect. Perhaps the quasi-Mobius loop coaster is an inherently flawed concept, but still, when it does race, it's an amazing ride. So if you don't get a race, just keep trying. And now it's time for the comment shoutout program. This is where I take 5 random comments from my previous video and read them out. These comments come from my video on the most improved coasters. No, This is Matrix says, "Went on Ninja in Georgia probably not long before the switch. It started to rain right at the top of the lift hill. Getting raindrops in the eye and partially obscuring vision added a new level to the headbanging lol." Liam says, "During my marching band trip, I rode Icebreaker for the first time a week before they got rid of the comfort collars. I lived so far away, I gotta wait so long. I also didn't get to ride Velocicoaster when I was down there." CJ79 says, "Icebreaker is already my number 1 at SeaWorld Orlando. I can't imagine how nuts it is now." Mr. Crash says, "Steel Phantom was not trashed." And Quick says, "So glad my home park got some love at number 1. Phantom is a treasure of a coaster considering its history, and it still holds up to coasters 20 years older. It's almost the father of RMCs, as someone who's ridden a lot of RMCs and Phantom hundreds of times." If you want to see your words in my next video, leave a comment down below and it may be selected. Please note though that inflammatory or spam comments will not be read. Thank you all so much, and if you want to support me on Patreon, you can do so once again at the link in the description. Thanks for watching, everyone. Feel free to like, share, and subscribe. You can follow me on social media on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, or you can check out my website at themeparkcrazy.com. And I'm on TikTok. This is Theme Park Crazy, and I'll see you all next time.